Okay. All right, Rangoli, let's figure this one. I'm gonna try to go as far as I can get, and then you can like tell me or ask questions or because we'll see how it goes. All right.
Okay.
So what we want to do is create a new project from Unity Hubs. So that's what Unity Hubs here is what we're using. We installed the different like versions of the software of Unity into the installs. And we want to use the long-term distribution of 2019.4, and the current one is 11F1. So then in projects, we can go and like create projects. There's a section called Learn, which is actually really neat because it's got a bunch of starter and beginner stuff and actions. So this is actually really, really cool. And one of the things people talked about last time was they wanted to roll a ball around. So in fact, there's a roll a ball around like tutorial. So there's a bunch of good materials at this like little beginning and lots of different ways to go. But that's in the Learn. The community one is actually just quick links like Unite Now, which is like their conference. I think it's a conference, but it's inspiring talks lecture. Okay, so it's the live version. You can go to YouTube and see them. The blog telling you what's up. Answers is pretty interesting because you can go and like post questions or see what other people ran into and answers. Forums or more of those discussions, and live help in groups. I haven't really used either of those two, but anyway, that's in the community. We got Learn, and we want to do projects. So the main piece here is we want to do an ad, and it's going to be a 3D project. That's going to be just the default for the moment, and then you have to pick a name for it. I'm going to call this one like Unity Vuforia Bolt starter. And that's the starter project because we want to see like, is Vuforia working? Is Bolt working? All those pieces in place. And that's pretty much it. We should be able to just hit create here and it should run through the creation process. Okay. And then, yeah, so this is the standard deal. It has to actually create all the directories. It has to do all the fun stuff that we want it to do. And let's see where it goes. It should launch. Hopefully it'll launch into the shared screen. We'll see what happens. Oh, initializing project, starting server, resolving packages, checking registration. All right. And it's thinking. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so again, all the defaults. Oh, neato. I got to bring it over. It launched on another screen.
Cool.
So I'll make it full screen so it's easy to see. I think that's all we need to do here. All right, we have sample scene. Wondering, do you recommend modifying the scene or just creating a new one?
You could rename it, but I don't think there's a need to
Benefit either
create a
way?
new. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so where are we at? So Unity has its main menu and game objects. We work with them quite a bit. Components we work with as well. We'll see those all pop into place. But we need to get two pieces of software specifically installed. One is the asset of Bolt, and the other one is the Vuforia package. So these can be done in either order, but let's go and do, let's go to the asset store where Bolt is actually at. So we want to go to the Windows and we want to select Asset Store. So Asset Store is something that has like free assets and paid for assets, but it's a lot of resources that any Unity programmer can actually use. And they have like sales and all these fun things. But it allows you to get access to some pretty cool stuff. This one called Bolt was purchased by Unity, so it's actually in the future versions going to be built into Unity. But for the meantime, we're going to scroll over here and we're going to look for Bolt. So Bolt is with Unity Technologies. It also has a free tutorial too, so you could actually learn about it. Oh, and it's by one of the YouTubers who does these incredible 2D games. So the style and the artwork and all that is really cool for that Bolt thing. So that's a pretty cool place to go. But meanwhile, we need to get over here to our Bolt scripting tool. So there it is. It's going to be Bolt. It's bought by Unity, and we need to import it into our project. It tells us stuff like, hey, what's the latest release? What version and higher does it support? So those are little checks that you want to have. Like our version is 2019.4 LLF1. So anyway, we're using the long-term distribution for it. So it should keep things pretty consistent. All right, so Bolt, what it does is it brings a visual scripting tool to Unity, and it's gonna simplify like the job of the artists and designers and the gameplay mechanics. We're gonna do those visually most of the time instead of in code. And of course, there's a bunch of technical pieces to it, but it's pretty straightforward once we get it. So long story short, we have to import it. And this is importing any of the assets that we would normally want to have, right? Let's and the import window is not on the main screen at the moment. The menu piece got moved. So all for some reason, in my setup for Unity, it likes to put on screen one all the menus, and then it likes to keep Unity in its like window up here where we're working. All right, so long story short, we have to import what they call Unity packages, and it's got some source files and it's got a little install script. So let's import this. And so we haven't really explored much of the system, but we got it. It imported. So it's sort of like, okay, now that we've imported it, well, what changed? You don't really see anything changing, but something did change. And this is where it actually, we want to look. It added a tools menu that includes install Bolt. So let's click install Bolt. And now it has even more assets, and it unpacked all that information from the other. We want all the defaults, so we're just going to do import. And that brings those assets into the system. So once they're in the system, we basically can start working with it. Let's see. It's running through. Actually good, pretty good. All right, so it loaded this, and now the setup wizard comes through. Bolt visual scripting. You want to click next in the wizard. For like what we're trying to do, we want programmer naming, because this is like in alignment with like all the programmer tasks. So if you go to the manual for Unity, it matches everything up properly. So we're going to use the programmer options, and we're going to take everything as default. And then for variables, you can muck with your variables, but we're going to take all of those as default, and it's going to generate all of the graphing capabilities from this. So and once that happens, we actually have, I think, Bolt into Unity. So it needs to move along. Let's see. Let's see. Yep. And the reason this takes a long time is it's sort of matching the graphics with the code, and it's doing like matchmaking, making sure they all fit. And it's working on units. So it takes a little bit of time to do, but that's all right. And you get the spinny wheel, code base to unit. Okay, still going. Here we go. So setup is complete. Now we can close this. Cool. So you'll see that we're actually at a screen with a bunch of stuff on it, and you don't really see too much, but this little section, install Bolt and Ludic, are in our assets. So there's a bunch of key terms that we're going to need to think of. Is that we grabbed assets from the asset store, we brought them into a folder called assets. So I can switch around. We have what is called our sample scene. So what happens too is we can have like a new scene, and when you create a new scene, it just says it's untitled. And let's say I want to rename or I want to save it. I just can go to file save or command save, but basically we want to save it, but we want to call it like, say, bolt test. All right, so bolt test is now here. It's got a main camera, a directional light, and I'm thinking to do the spinning thing. How do we just get a cube in the world and spin stuff? So I'm staring at assets, which is like, hey, we already took care of that. So this is a little bit about like, what do we see? So when we click through the information, there's what's called the scene and what's called the game. And then there's a variety of menus, but scene is lined up to the scene. So there's a main camera that we're looking at over here is our main camera. And we have a directional light that provides light into the world. So that's pretty cool. But on the left side is a hierarchy of objects. So that's everything in the scene is on the left. Everything that is like placed and visualized on the right. And then we have a pause and a play button up here. So if we wanted to play the game, you just hit the play button and it moves from basically being the scene to what's called game. And then all of the game stuff would activate. So if I flip back to scene, I still see the construction of it. Flip over to game, we should see what's actually happening. Since it's only a camera and a light, we just get this like crazy future view. So let's do two things, right? I think we've got to add a plane, and that can be ground. So in order to add a plane, you can either right click or under the menus, it's like game objects. You create 3D game objects and we can say, hey, let's make a plane. And now it puts it right into the world. And you go from like, okay, I have a plane in the world. And on the right-hand side, it's got an inspector. And the inspector says, hey, where is this? Well, it's at 0, 0, 0. It's got a rotation of 0. And it's a scale of 1, 1, 1. So usually 1 is, I think, the virtual equivalent of a meter in Unity. So that's sort of a way to think of it. It's like if it's a 1 meter, 2 meters, etc. You basically, your scale, well, scaling is a little bit differently. Like you can be 1.5 scale, but the actual dimensions of your thing can be like 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter. Okay. That's what I remember at least. All right, so I have a plane. So that gives us some camera plane. So if I wanted to change the camera, I can change the camera around, direction, I move over and I can check the directional light out and I have the plane. All right, so that's neato. But I wanted to spin a cube. So let's get another 3D object and we'll grab cube. So it puts cube in the scene. And you'll see the cube basically loads right into the middle of the plane. This is at 0, 0, 0. And the scale of it is 1, 1, 1. So what's going on is it's -5 by, what is it? -5 by 5 or 0.5. So if I wanted to move this flat to the surface, I can hit 1, but remember it's a 0.5. So if I wanted to be directly on the surface, I need a 0.5. But I do want it to float. So the other way to do it is to get these handles. So I can hit the green handle and pull it up. You can see the shadow from the light. We can see from the camera. Oh, right. The scene displays from the camera. So if I hit play here, is this cube actually in the camera? And there it is. The cube is in the camera casting a shadow. Cool. All right. So this is sort of like adding assets, but what we can look at is in the assets folder, we didn't actually add anything in here other than there's a scenes folder that holds sample scene. So Bolt test should actually eventually go into here. So that's the Bolt test scene. It works like files, just drag and drop. So you can just drag and drop them. You can also right click and create some folders and you can organize your stuff. All right, but we really want to work with the cube. And if I click the cube, I've got an inspector for the cube on the right-hand side of the screen. And it tells me, hey, you know, those positions information, the rotation information, can it receive light like shadows? Does it have like advanced features like light probes? So how does it do interpolation and occlusion? So these are fancy topics. The others has a box collider. So if something bumps into the box, it knows what's touching it. So that if you touch it, for instance, it'll do something. So it's got all these great features. And then it has what we call a material. So under material, right now it's a default material, which is a gray. So you could have, we would give it a different color if we really want to. So I believe albedo is the under main maps. That particular color is, that's what it's doing. But, oh, you know what? I have to create a material, I think. So I'm just going to do something really quick. I'm going to make a folder, you call it mats or material. And I can do create, and I'm just using the right click for all this stuff, but there's menus, material. So, hey, I'm going to just call it, I'm going to rename this one green material. So I want to steal a green color. So albedo now has the edit, it has a dropper, and I'm going to grab, in theory, oh, it can't grab that. Can't grab the color from my screen. All right, so we'll just click on it and we should get the color wheel and we'll just grab some green. There we go. So now I have a green material. Woohoo. And the fun part is we want that cube to have this green material. So why don't we just drag the material onto the cube? Does that work?
It should. You can also drag it onto the scene.
So I want that to be green. There we go. So it replaced the default shader with this green material shader. So now you got your color. There we go. Neato. And this can also be pictures and other graphics as well, but we're just doing colors at the moment. Cool. Okay. So given our exploration of the cube, now we want to do something fancier. And this is from the Svengoolie. I think this is where we want, in Bolt terms, a flow.
A flow graph, yeah.
A flow graph. Okay. So, flow machine. So all of the logic goes into flow machine. You can put the logic into objects. So I'm going to click it, and that's going to add a flow machine. Now it's going to be a macro. That's fine. Then we don't have defaults. So well, I guess we need a flow macro, right?
Yes.
Because there's just nothing you can do without that. So we have to hit new to make a new one. And we're going to call this one just rotate. And let's make a new folder real quick and we'll call it macros, right? And that way we'll just hold those together. And we'll put rotate inside of the macro one. And I'll look over in my assets folder and I can see materials, I can see macros, I can see rotate. But I clicked away, so I need to find a way to get back to my object. I want to work with it, so I can click it in the scene or I can click it in the hierarchy. So now I've got the flow machine is ready to go. Actually, it's all nice and lined up. So we'll just call this rotate, and we can call it give it rotate object, because essentially you can rotate anything with the logic of rotate. And then this one is next step. There's we've already done all the stuff that we can do so far, but then it becomes edit graph. So if I hit edit graph, we will now get a graph. Now I need to bring it back. So there it is, flow graph. So what I find is that there's a space on the screen and where you organize everything. So what I can do is I can grab the little tab from that and I can pull it into various places. So I want to just grab it so I can kind of see down at the bottom of the screen what's going on. So one thing that's really interesting about this is that this is now a visual of the code. Any object that you work with has what you call a start event and an update event. And start is when you hit play and it comes into the world, it starts, boom. Update is, oh, what's going on? Any changes in the world, etc. So so one is on start, the other is update when things are updating. So all right, now we want to do this. It's called every frame. Oh, right. We're 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, whatever our frames a second is, update is called on a regular basis. So you can push out changes or you can receive changes on those updates. But in our case, we're going to wire this visually together. So if I remember correctly, I want to hover over, I want this thing and I'm going to drag, and this is a moment of truth. If it's working, you let go and it gives you a window to search stuff. So we want to search, we're talking rotate, right? We saw the thing I was saying, hey, we want to rotate the cube. So I think in this case, I could just type in rotate and we'll see what all comes up related to rotate. And it's going to search all the commands basically throughout the manual. And look, there's a transform rotate. So that will actually give us the ability to do some form of rotation. So you can have angle, you can have axis and angle, Eulers, relative to, there's all kinds of options for it. So I think you did you do angle XYZ?
Yes, I did angle
Okay.
XYZ.
All right. And that is going to be what we'll pick. So there we go. So now I have an angle and it says rotate the self. The self is actually the cube you're attached, whatever you're attached to. You've got these options of rotation. So I can do more than rotate, but I have it here and it's attached to the object. It has a rotate feature, but it's not told what to do. So if I hit play, does anything happen? And answer is probably no, because we didn't change anything. Yep. So it gives us this cool like thing. Hey, we're updating, which is awesome. So if I hit, I got to stop play so I can go back. All right. So if we want to change these values, like I could just say, well, let's make it 45 degrees in the X. Let's make it 45 in the Y, and let's make it 45. So what'll happen is instead of it on start being at an angle, it's going to be updating, but it should update to a constant. So I think it'll rotate to a point and just stay there. It might not even rotate, it might just go to it. Oh no, it does. Oh, okay.
Because it's
So I was
constantly
wrong.
updating. It's not just a start event, it's an update event.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say one of the things that's interesting, I should be able to grab this and disconnect it. And let's see, can I disconnect it while it's running? Who knows? All right, let me stop this real quick. So this is the art, understanding what's going on. So like if I actually wanted to, let me cut and paste this. I have two of these. I'm gonna grab this over here and I'm gonna say like, say on start event, we'll change to 45s. Click and drag, click and drag. All right. So this one right now, let's put it at zeros. And so what would happen there is it would, well, let's find out what would happen because we just tested it out. So one would start its start position to 45 and then it would say 0, 0, zeros. So the question is it going to a position or is it doing it by change? So it goes to a position and says 0, 0, 0. So that's zero change. Okay. So that's what happened to us, is that this is a change. This is like a delta angle, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, cool. So I'm going to unplay that. So what that means is that I'm changing it not by too much. So if I wanted to change it by a nudge, all right, I could say in my X direction, turn at 0.1. So that should be pretty small, I hope, but let's find out. I think you know the answer, so that's good. Let's see. Spinning ball. And we have a nice slow rotation. And one of the things to look at is which X is it rotating in, right? Yeah. I think it's self-rotation. So it's from the point of view of the cube itself rotating. So that's how you would get like a slow rotation going. Let's see.
If you look at the top right in the inspector, you can see the values changing.
Ah, here we go. Our position data is now changing as it's going through. Cool. Excellent. So that's in the upper right. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm going to stop the play. So let's see, what are the, so one is you can set its initial position. The other is we've got like, I can make a small change. We can make bigger changes. So if I made it a 1, and I could say rotate it also a 1, that should be a little faster, and we'll get 2 angles of rotation. Aha, there we go. That like looks real smooth and nice. Okay. So I'll stop that and say, so at this stage, Ringo, do you have any suggestions? Because we got to our rotating a cube. Is there anything else to try at this point? Or because what we'll do is we'll do rotation to other kinds of stuff in a separate step. But what would be?
So one thing I want to make note of is to make sure you exit play when you're making any changes, because when you make changes while the thing is being played, it won't save them.
Okay, so
So
I'm gonna
that's
hit
a,
play. So I'm gonna do what you said. I'm gonna break the rule. So we have this rotation, but let's say I want to really, like what I did before was I put 45 in, and so now the thing is just going nuts, right? And so I'm like, oh well, somehow I like this insane speed. Let me stop. So when I hit play here, it did remember the 45.
I guess for
So
Bolt it does.
yeah, so this is a good one to know, is that Bolt does remember some things. It remembers more than the regular player.
Mhm.
And we can actually show how this is impact, which is if I go 0, let's go back to it only rotates in one direction, and it's a pretty good rotation speed. Hit play again. So this is a really important distinction, because Bolt has this thing where like it's going to do the activity as shown, and it's going to remember some of the stuff. But the inspector and every part of Unity is alive, and that's where I think where you're going. And so what'll happen is, let's say I wanted to raise the object another unit higher. So let's move the object 2 up. So you can see I just type in 2, and now we're 2 units in the air, and it's still doing the rotation. And you can spend a lot of time working on this. So let's say I wanted to move it 2 units in the X. Boom, I'm in 2 units in the X. And you get everything tweaked, right? And everything's perfect. You hit the stop play, and you'll look over here, all of those little changes that we made in the inspector go away. So the inspector in play mode will let you play around, but it will revert back to where you started.
Yeah.
So there's the rub. So Bolt is pretty forgiving when it comes to that, but the inspector is going to give you a hassle. And this is a big gotcha, because you could spend like 15 minutes making something beautiful and then stop the play button and blammo, you're in trouble. So anyway, this is super good gotcha. Really cool thing to get to the bottom of. Okay. Oh, save.
Variables.
Saving is a good thing.
Saving is a good thing.
All right. So if we want to leave that here, then we have a rotation for an object, which is cool. Basic speed. We got a start position for it. But the next thing up, I think, is Vuforia.
You should also go over variables if you
Oh,
don't
okay,
want to
okay.
edit all
Before
of the
that.
ones manually.
Okay. So yeah. So you know how we're entering values in manually, then variables are the next thing up. Well, let's wonder if there's a way to, I'm going to drag it backwards. So I dragged from the input, and it gives me contextually different things I can use. And so whatever's appropriately available, I can throw in here. This one says a float literal. I'm just going to click it. And a float literal is now going to say, hey, I'm just going to put, say, 1 into that float literal. So the angle doesn't have a value here now. I'm going to actually turn this one off. And if I hit play, it's going to take that input. And if we change it, you know, it'll go faster. So that's one thing you can drag from your object and get like a literal value. So this is floats. Floats are not just 2, but they're like 2 let's say 2.111, right? Their floating point values are kind of like real world numbers for computers. let's see. Now the other thing here is, let's say I wanted to do a variable. And under here is variables. So let's see, save variables. Is this the one that you went through?
Uh, it was a graph variable, but the way that I went through it was to open up the variable window.
Okay. So this
So
one here?
if you go into Windows up in the main menu,
Ah, window. Yeah. Oh, wait,
there's a
we're
variables.
up here. Graph inspector, variables. There we go. And then of course I have a new window. I'll grab that. Hit plus. Please choose a new variable name. And this is where you can name them. They can have
Mhm.
what you would want. Yeah.
So speed, for example.
So you can't, it doesn't, so what it is, you have to type straight into it
Yeah.
without looking for a cursor. You just have to click on it, and then now you can type. So let's say, yeah, we can use speed. And if we wanted to, we could say like speed Z, and that would be a variable. So plus, let's do plus, okay. And the type, so these are the built-in types. Integers are just straight out 1, 2, 3, 4 type numbers. Floats are those things that have the point values. And these angles and things can have point values, so we need that. And then a default value you could have. So right now default is 0. So that looks pretty good. So just looking through here. Okay. So now that we have that variable, it's got the round dot on it. Do I just drag it?
Yeah, just drag it.
Okay. Oof. So it has a get variable, graph, speed. So now I'm gonna, instead of, let's see, I'm gonna move this over so we can reach it. So I had that sort of, I've turned my property into a thing. I can disconnect, or I can just click too many times on things. Ah. No.
Can you just
All
hit
right.
the delete key while selecting the?
Well, I'm still, this one's going to be connected to Z. I just wanted to not cross over each other. So I'm going to move it down this way. So we still have, so we have a variable speed Z, and it's initialized to 0. So if I hit play, nothing would happen, right? Yeah. Let me throw variables. I don't want to lose that screen, so I'm going to move it over to the side. Hit play here. Okay, so they're getting the input, but the Z isn't really doing much. So like if I come in and type 0 here, the whole thing stops. But the default for this was that. So now what's next up? When do you give it a number?
So if you go into the variable inspector tab,
Okay.
you can type in a value there.
All right, so I threw into, and then yeah, look at that. It's actually
Mhm.
going around the Z direction.
And then if you look at the actual connection between the float and the transform and that, it gives you the value that's being passed.
There's a 2 right next to that one and a 0 next to that one. So it tells you what's being fed into that.
Mhm.
And then one of the other, just another part is you can grab handles. So if I grab this, it'll say, hey, you can attach some other stuff to it. So you can grab text, you can grab a math node, you can get other variables that you want to work with, you want to add a formula. There's a bunch of options. So whatever is contextually appropriate to connect actually shows up there. So I'm just gonna point that out for the moment. And then let's just give it a little 0.1 rotation in that direction. So yeah, that's pretty slow. Let's give it a 1 in that direction. So now they really kind of do the both rotation. All right. Yeah, those are important bits. And that gives us a fully functioning flow graph that has like a rotation that we like and can edit. Woo. Okay. So that is the bolt part. Oh my goodness. So if I would do something here, this would be like a good like video click, like separate out the two sections.
Yeah.
But that gets us bolt, and here's our bolt test. So what we would do next is Vuforia. So I've got a few more. So let's do a Vuforia scene. But we don't really have Vuforia in here yet. So that's going to be the next challenge. I've got the untitled folder. I want it to go into scenes. So we'll say Vuforia hello. Because you can name these however you want, but we want to say hello to Vuforia. And right now, Vuforia doesn't care what your main camera. You can keep your lights. We have scene variables. Those are from the flow graph, I think. So that we made variables before, so it's just keeping track that we have variables. And directional light. Okay. So Vuforia. So hopefully one of the things is we would in the demos have shown like Vuforia does these things. Like Vuforia is out on internet land. And we're interested in the developer portal for Vuforia. So I have to do a couple things real quick. So Vuforia engine. So, and then as a developer, this is another area where getting an account and all that works. If we're sharing the database, that's one thing, but to have your own databases and all sorts of images, you have to have your own account. So you can register an account. In case I've got one, I'm already here. And we've already set up Burn Seminar, the key for it. So we'll get more to here, but we'll do it from inside Unity real quick. So I have to bring Unity to like not full screen because we're going to switch between the browser and that. Okay, so let's see, what do we got? This one is packages. So we did assets before and it's importing assets. That's a standard procedure. The next thing is you can get packages that you want to have, and they are like bundles of not just projects, but bundles of features by other companies and other things that they're really great. But you got to go to a package manager to get your packages. And here's my setup. So it's kind of loading the packages and it tells you everything you can throw in. And there's a bazillion things. There's like, what is it? It's got everything from all the different render pipelines. It's got the SDKs. So like if you're working on Xiaomi devices or you want Windows mixed reality, there's all kinds of stuff to pull in from here. But what we really want is Vuforia. Type enough letters and it finds it because it's in that search space. All right, and we're interested in the default versions. Let's look at see all versions. So latest one is, okay, this is the one I think 8.5.9, we can pick that one because these are the published versions that they have. So let's go with that. The 8.1 is actually older than all the others. I mean, we can just do that by explaining.
Verified for 2019.4.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I see. It's right. This was the one at launch. So they test that one to be what we want. Interesting. We'll live dangerously and grab that one. Okay. So same deal. It has to go out to the internet. It has to pull the assets down. then it runs all the stuff to get things set up. And then it's sort of, you have to look around trying to find what did it do? Where did the menu go? Where's the thing for it? So as soon as it's loaded, we have to look for that. Let's see. Yep, it's doing all right. Okay. So again, loaded. All right, looks good. So I'll X out the window. We won't need that for the moment. So the question is, hey, we're in this Vuforia setup. Where's Vuforia, right? So I believe the windowing system all managed to update, and we have Vuforia configuration. So new menus just kind of show up whenever you grab the packages, and then you have to figure out where they are. So this is where it is. So this is the key thing for us. We need to configure it to actually find our materials.
So it is open in Inspector, but you're on the Variables tab right now.
Thank you. So we'll click here and blammo. All right. So it does things like, hey, you're at 8.59. Hey, there's a even newer version. And the newer version is even farther away from our current version. So we're just going to skip that for the moment. But we'll see, we need an application license. So we have to do add license, and there you go. It takes us back over to the page. So you do a get development key, because that's we're not deploying, we're getting the development piece. And so we made one burn seminar. And if you did a get, you would just click into license manager and you would fill the info in and say, okay, let's get a free development key. Boom. Then here I have my key. So avert your eyes. I need to make a copy of it. So that's copied to clipboard. But we may actually share that key. We'll see what happens. But you should be able to get a development key pretty straightforward. And then you have to work your way back. So if I go app license key, I just paste that in. So we're good to go there. Then the other is we need a database of images. And so this is under target manager. The targets are different kinds of databases. So I have like last year's project, this year's project. We have a burn park, an art gallery, but Burn Seminar 2020 is just like the starter one for us. And you can see it's basically a target, and it says an image and an image quality. And this is the picture that it matches. And the way the tech works is it says, is this augmentable? And it's like, yes. You could update the target, but we're not interested in that. We want to see the features. And so this is based off of black and white, and it looks for the edges. And you see all these edges everywhere, and it's a random pattern. That's the unique random pattern of edges, so that doesn't get confused with other pictures. But this is what's in our database, and that's what we need to move to Unity. So download the database, and you'll see I want it for the Unity editor. Download here, and downloading land. Now I actually downloaded this already, so fortunately, I mean, actually it was really fast. So it's a Unity package. So this is the other, we did packages one way, but we have it as our own custom object that we want to import in. So you need to go assets, import package, custom package. This is not pre-made for us like in the asset store, and it's not pre-made for us like the other. So in this case, we're going to say this is our custom package in the download folder, and we want to find wherever that ended up. Boom, burn seminar. I'll pick, they're both the same here, so click that one. And now it's that same import procedure that we've gone through a few different times. Hit import, and now the items are added into the system. Okay, so we have a database, and we're basically loaded up. So whatever we're going to do locally is all here. And then go full screen again. This way we'll just focus on that. Then how do we get from like a default scene so we can actually get Vuforia to work? There's two major elements.
Yes, so we want to add an AR camera.
Okay, so we don't need two cameras in the scene. So if I get this one, that'll delete it. And I can right click, and there's a section for Vuforia image, Vuforia engine. And also if we go up to Windows and things, you can find That's our config file. But up in game objects, the Vuforia engine has its features. So I can just do my right-click context menu and just kind of speed through it. Vuforia image, AR camera, boom. And then this here puts that camera right into the scene. We don't have to do anything with it right away. I think there are some reasons to change and edit it, but for the default behavior that we're looking for, we don't have to do anything. So that's good for just quick demo. Looking through here, it says it's got the Vuforia behavior script attached to it, and it's going to be worked on the device. All the defaults are fine, so I don't think we have to change any of that. So that means the camera view. So this is going to substitute and act with your webcam, or it's going to act with your cell phone camera. And then back to Vuforia engine, right? There's a bunch of things you can do, but what we want are images, right? We want to target that image.
Yes.
Okay, so image. So now it's in the scene. There's that picture, all from that database that we made. Okay, then the next part would be like, okay, well, we have this image target. We could hit play here, but not. I think I can hit play and see if we break anything, right? Or even save is a good idea. Hit play. And this is the first time it's run, so we'll see how it goes. Ah, oh yeah, so it found my HDMI camera. That's interesting. We have to figure out how to control which camera it's gonna do, because like, this is the HDMI camera instead of my camera, because I have multiple cameras running.
That might be in the Vuforia configuration.
Yeah. So let's see.
If you go back to AR camera, there's a thing on the bottom where it says World Center Mode Device. You can open the Vuforia engine configuration there.
Oh yeah, thank you.
And that'll just take you right back here.
Webcam, let's take a peek. You can disable it, but we don't want to. Oh, camera device, cool. So I want to be my FaceTime camera. There we go. So the FaceTime camera is the one we're looking for. This is an interesting, now that I'm using so many cameras, it's like a huge gotcha. All right, cool, thank you. Hit play over here. And let's see. We probably should see me, I imagine. Yep, there I am. But I don't have, I need to have the picture on my phone. I'll go look that up quick. And then, but the problem is that it doesn't do anything yet. It doesn't know to do anything. So I'm gonna hit turn off play here. And this is the part where we need to add stuff, right? And we want to add a spinning cube to it because we already made our spinning cube. So we could just say, I want a 3D object, cube, and you can see it's nested. So the cube is in there and it's sitting on top of that thing. Scale is an interesting problem. We'll see what the scale is, but we had two things, right? If I go back to my project folder, I can look in for my materials. I want it to be green, so I'm just going to drop green on it. And then the other part was we had created a rotate. So what are you going to install? Bolt macros. Do we just drag rotate to it?
No, so it needs the Bolt modifier again. So if you go back to the cube,
yep,
you add component, and you want a flow machine again.
Okay.
And now you can drag your macro into that slot.
All right, there we go. Boom. Okay, it says rotate object, and I'm just gonna, I think this will just leave it as default, but I can go to the flow graph too. Yeah. Okay, so now it's the fun part where I look at my phone trying to find pictures. And here's a picture. Okay, I have it now. I have it. So I'm gonna hit play. And it should remember one thing versus another. And here's my phone. Now shininess is kind of the enemy of this.
Often lowering the brightness on your phone helps.
Okay. Hmm. Oh, you know what? I have a bunch of contrast points in my image that, oh, there we go. Found it.
Mhm.
So once you catch it, it's going to hold on, but it needs to, like, it's what it's doing is it's going to need either the right reflection or the right contrast point. So like if I move this up, so the reflection, I have a lot of light in here. Yeah. So this is the deal is you end up having to figure out how to get these things to match up and make them reliable. So we just got that kind of question started, but I can move this around to a certain amount, and at some point I'm going to lose it, but I've kind of caught it. And as long as I've caught it, it's going to try to figure it out. And there we go. So it's pretty robust, but as soon as it loses tracking, and those are all topics for another time. But hey, we have a rotating cube, and it actually pops up and it's doing the Vuforia thing. And this is a good starting spot for other projects. So I'm going to save this project, and I'm going to put it up on the GitHub Classroom area as a resource, as a repository. So there'll be another step of how do you take your project, put it into GitHub and get it out of there so you can share it with other people, but that'll be next time. So.
Rick, you have to exit play mode to save.
Oh, thank you. And that was the other critical element. Always exit play mode, and also file save project is a good one,
Mhm.
because sometimes, you know, Command S is save your scene, not save your project. So, but anyway, saving project should do all of that. But yeah, this is the craziness. Thank you. Thanks, Rangoli.
Yep.
All right, so let me look at my control system. Stop recording.